All right, perfect. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this very echoey conversation about Bookbub. So on this presentation, I'm going, sorry, it's a bit weird. I'm going to go over kind of the basics of Bookbub, but also how to use Bookbub for launching. And one of the things I just always want to start out with, and just kind of, I realize that this audience has various levels of skill in terms of where you are in, like, how many books you've launched, if you're relaunching a series, launching a first series, your first book, trying to use this to reinvigorate your backlist. This is in no ways a magic bullet, right? Bookbub has a lot of advantages to it, but it is, at the same token, it is only one tool in your toolkit. It's really something that, if you really want to kind of master this landscape, you have to learn how to use Bookbub in tandem with other things like promotions, your actual kind of launch schedule, AMS ads, Facebook ads, and all of that stuff. Of course, I do not have time to cover all that, so I'm going to just stay focused on Bookbub. But I really need you guys to realize that this is part of an ecosystem. And if you use this as a standalone strategy, it will not work. So, okay, so what is Bookbub? For the handful of you who don't know what Bookbub is, just really quickly, Bookbub is a kind of a service that reader enthusiasts can sign up to, and they can realize, follow their genre, follow the books that they're interested in. It is latest and greatest focused, and it allows readers to share recommendations, reviews, archives, and follows. It's new release focused, so I do find that Bookbub as a strategy tends to work quite well for releases, and it is discount focused. Now, there are two levels to Bookbub. Right? There is the actual Bookbub recommendations or featured deals, which you can ask Bookbub to do a featured deal. I think anyone who's been around for a while, Craig Martell asked 99 times until they finally gave him a featured deal. And then you have the actual ad platform, which is a CPC platform. So it's a cost per click platform where it's where you can actually bid for impressions and clicks in order to get your book in front of people. And that's what we'll be focusing on, is Bookbub as a CPC or a CPM platform. So why Bookbub? Millions of users, including my 80-year-old mother, who's really annoyed at me because she discovered I had new releases through Bookbub and I didn't tell her in person. So it is powerful, right? I mean, like if my mother uses it, then it's gotten to a new level, right? It has several deals, as I mentioned, and it is great for wide promotions. Now, this is not my focus. My focus will actually be for Amazon promotions. And also, email is king. And this is what I mean by augmenting your strategy. Like, one of your key strategies has to be newsletters. And Bookbub is an extension of the newsletter. It's like the newsletter hack. It's for those of you who don't have a big list. You can piggyback off of Bookbub's list and really kind of get some readers and get some reach that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get. Okay, so to that point of email is king. This is the best I could do for a screenshot as to what it looks like on the email, right? So when you sign up to Bookbub, you get a whole bunch of recommendations, and at the very bottom, you get this special little box in the middle where you can click on it, and that is the paid advertisement. That is what yours will be. Now, Bookbub also has features on its website where you can get clicks on the website and on its blog and kind of get noticed there. But primarily, I think what drives most of your clicks when using Bookbub as a strategy will be the email stuff. Okay? So, step one, how do you create a great Bookbub campaign? And it starts with cyber stalking. This is where every single one of you needs to really embrace your inner creep and just figure it out, right? Like, really get into the other author space, because the better you can target, the better results you can get on Bookbub. And one of the biggest mistakes that people make is, oh, I'm writing cozy mystery, right? Or I'm writing romance, or I'm writing urban fantasy, and you start targeting people in cozy mystery, romance, or fantasy. This is probably the dumbest thing you can do, right? You need to be targeting the people in your niche, right? So it's not I'm writing romance, I'm writing billionaire boyfriend, right? And there's a big difference between generic romance and billionaire boyfriend, or even worse, if you're writing billionaire boyfriend and you're targeting mobster boyfriends, because it's a different hit, right? It's a different target. So when you're cyber stalking, you really need to make sure that you are picking the right authors to target. So how do you figure out who to pick the right authors to target? Well, Amazon and Goodreads are a good place. This is where you look at something like the also bots. So I'm picking on Kimbra Swain here. She's not here, but if you meet her, she has long blue hair. And so you look at customers who bought this book also bought. This is a great place to find the right targets. And then you look at series deals, so customers who bought this series also bought. So this works two ways, right? So if you have an existing series out, you want to be looking at your own also bots and your own series also bots to figure out who your targeted authors are. Because there's a good chance, especially if you launch properly, that the people in your also bots are the right kind of people. They're using the same tropes, they use similar settings, similar level of humor, similar level of romance or of magic or of sci-fi, technology, whatever it is, it's all similar. In fact, I have a whole presentation just on how to figure out who your tier ones are, which I unfortunately don't have time to go over here. This is one of these conversations where I could talk for easily 6 hours on this conversation. So I just want to leave it at, you got to target it right. Now, if you're just about to launch, this is where it gets a bit, troublesome, I guess, for especially newer authors, because you really have to know thyself. You have to know what your book actually is when trying to figure out who to target. And this is where you're looking at the tropes that you're using, your level of humor, and you're not getting too precious, right? We all have, I don't know who has children in this audience, but I know that to me, my children are the most beautiful creatures on this planet. To the person sitting 3 rows behind me on the airplane, they're a bubbling mess of mucus and puke, right? So you have to be able to look at your books objectively and make sure that you're not kind of being too precious about your baby. So this is where you go onto Amazon and you really try to examine other authors who are similar to you in terms of things like tropes, style, humor, level of magic, level of romance, stuff like that. And then you look at their also bots to find targets. Does that make sense? I want to just kind of stop here for a second, because if I've lost anyone here, then you're kind of screwed. So does that make sense? Everyone cool? Okay. Awesome. So the other place, oh, sorry, I keep forgetting my keyboard's broken. The other place is author profiles. So you can look on Kimbra's profile, she's one of my tier ones, right? She has similar humor, similar style to me. And so I can look at the other authors in her, who she's kind of associated with. This works well. And then with Goodreads, you have, I forget what it's called, and I'm so blind I can't actually see it. Readers also enjoyed. There you go. That's how blind I am. I needed my glasses to read that. So there you go. All right. So other hot cyber stalking hotspots. Newsletters, right? So join the authors who you think are your tier ones. Join their newsletters. See who they're giving shout outs to. See what they're interested in. Facebook, right? So this is where you cyber stalk these authors, their profile, their page, and their group. But this is also where you can go to fan groups and say, literally say, this is what I'm writing. Can you recommend authors similar to me in these fan groups? And they'll give you a real insight. And guess what? That's a little bit of pre-marketing for you. Because these sites tend to be, not always, and you do have to be a little bit careful on which sites you're doing this on, but many of these sites tend to be new author friendly. And so it's a great way to start some of that early marketing buzz, okay? Then you have other social media sites. So this is where you have to know thy genre, right? And different genres have different kind of hotspots that they like to hang out on. So for example, I know with Lit RPG, as an example, Reddit is a great social media platform for it, right? Whereas with urban fantasy, you're not going to find many Reddit threads that are going to be of use for you. With romance, there's a dirty Discord, which isn't as dirty as it sounds, but dirty enough, I guess. So dirty Discord, which is another social media platform. Well, Discord is a social media platform, sorry. Maybe there is a dirty Discord, I don't know. All right, and then Ask the Fans, which I mentioned, and then finally Bookbub. So one of my recommendations for you is to create a Bookbub profile as if you were a fan of what you write, right? And don't do anything else. Don't confuse the algorithm by like also following Stephen King. Only follow the authors that you have identified as your tier ones and see who they recommend to you, see who Bookbub recommends to you. Now take that with a grain of salt, because Bookbub will recommend things that are completely irrelevant to the genre, but it's a good indicator. It's a good sign as to what other people are doing, and especially if you scroll down all the way to the bottom and look at where other authors are advertising and what they are advertising. That's a great thing to do, okay? Step 2, add images. Now, if you downloaded the profile, the presentation, you'll know that I misspelled ad. I spelled the ADD. I apologize for that. I've since fixed it. All right, so here's an ad image, and this is where you want to create the value proposition. So there's a bunch of stuff to create ad images, which I will try to cover some of them now. But the truth is that different genres work differently, different authors work differently, and also different audiences respond to different style covers. And so it's all about testing, testing, testing. But there are some design basics that I think everyone should at least try to do when creating their ads. One of them is kind of so that the girl with the dragon is on the cover of the book, right? And they say revenge is best served cold. Personally, I like mine served with a side of dragon fire is the log line to the book, right? So there's some coherence between the ad and my product page, right? But there's also the value propositions, okay? 99 cents, Kindle Unlimited. These are selling points to readers. Remember, Bookbub is a discount and new focused platform. So new, 99 cents, Kindle Unlimited, stuff like that. Now, if you're going wide, you can actually target, and I'm not going to talk much about wide, but you can actually target the other platforms. So you can say exclusive to Apple or Apple special, right? You know, or Nook special or something like that. And you can make bespoke images depending on, you know, what you're doing with your presentation. So this is kind of like the ad basics. And I'll show you images that worked. Now this is an interesting one. So this is for a series that I wrote with Michael Anderle called Midgard. And full disclosure, this series failed miserably, which was a great first showing with my collaborations with Michael. Yay. But it did. It failed horrifically. Okay? But here's something that's really interesting, and I just want to kind of point this out just to kind of get you guys in the mindset of how important images are. So when I first started writing and using Bookbub to target, and having a lot of success on Bookbub, right? Like, I mean, it wasn't like I was failing miserably. I would target Michael Anderle with my own stuff, and it didn't work, right? I would get a fraction of a percentage of what I was hoping for. But this image converted at 6%, and I'll get a little bit, in a little bit I'll explain what these conversion rates mean, but it converted at 6+%, right? And on average, you're aiming for a 3+% conversion rate, if not better, okay? And so what's the difference between that image and all the other images I tried when targeting Michael Anderle? And the answer is that was made by one of his primary cover designers. Because Michael has like 3 or 4 cover designers who are his, like who do 90% of his covers, right? And that's done by Caleb, who's one of his top, you know, who's done every cover I've ever done with Anderle, but also a whole bunch of other covers with Anderle. And somehow, even though nowhere does it say Michael Anderle, nowhere does it say the name of the series, or even my name, it converted at 6%, right? Because the readers, over time, get trained on what works for them. And it's a bit of a symbiotic relationship. You're training the readers to respond to your brand, but at the same time, they're naturally responding to your brand and therefore become your readers, right? chicken versus the egg kind of thing, and we can get drunk and philosophize on that later. All right, here's another image that worked really well for me. And then here's the third image that worked really well. And I'd like you to take note of that third image and just kind of remember it for the next slide, because you'll notice that I used that example earlier with the two arrows of the value proposition. Because when you look at images that didn't work, this image didn't work for the Midgard series. This image didn't work for the Better Demon series. And this image, which was the original image I showed you, didn't work for the Setting Fires with Dragon series, okay, when testing it. So just focusing on that last image for a minute, why did that image not work when, sorry, I should have put them next to each other. This image did, right? What's the only difference is there's no Kindle Unlimited, right, at the bottom, and it says new instead of 99 cents. So why did this one not work? It's basically the same image, and it has a better call to action or a better value proposition. And the answer is, I have no fucking clue, right? I have a theory, which I think I can probably attribute to Craig Falconer, who's sitting in the front here, who kind of gave me this theory, which is that Dragon Rider readers are a very specific readership, right? And what's appealing to them are dragons. And dragons are badass creatures that, like are really cool and majestic and breathe fire and all that stuff. And so when I have it with 99 cents in Kindle Unlimited, I'm kind of begging, right? I'm kind of going like, oh, please read my book. Whereas the other image, oh, shit, sorry. Whereas the other image just simply says new. Right, and it has a lot more moxie behind it, right? It's a lot more bravado behind it. I'm not begging you. I'm not trying to sell it to you on the fact that it's cheap and Kindle Unlimited, but rather, hey guys, here's a new dragon book. Check it out, right? And this kind of insight into your audience and your readers, it matters, and it will make a difference to the success of your books, is understanding what's the biggest needle mover for your readers, okay? All right, the number 2, testing, okay? This is the most important part. This is what I'm going to be emphasizing the most in this presentation. But first, I kind of need to give you some dashboard, ad setup basics, and a couple tips and tricks, just to make sure that we're all on the same page with Bookbub. Otherwise, this won't make as much sense. So first of all, the dashboard. Look, there's a lot of information on the dashboard, but there are 3 things that matter the most. Actually, let me rephrase that. There are 3 things that matter the most to me, and they're the only 3 things that I personally look at. When you do your own Bookbub campaigns, the rabbit hole goes deep, and you are welcome to go as far down as you want. But for me, I only look at the effective CPC, so that's the cost per click, the budget spent, and the CTR. So just very quickly, the only thing I'm going to focus on right now, I think the budget spent's obvious, right? If I have a $15 a day budget, if I'm spending $15, it means it's spending my budget. If I'm spending $5 a day, it's not, right? Okay, so it's fairly obvious. The effective CPC is just making sure that I'm not going crazy with my pricing. Like, so my cheapest CPC on this little example is 72 cents. I usually try to aim for under 50 cents, right? But I'll be honest, for every single person who, when I said I usually aim for 50 cents, who looked down at their notebook and wrote down 50 cents, please scratch that out, because different genres have different price points. And if you're writing urban fantasy that's similar to what I do, then maybe you can use 50 cents as a guideline. But if you're not, you better kind of do your own testing to figure out what the actual reasonable cost per click really is for you and for your genre and for what you're writing, okay? CTR is the one that I want to emphasize, and CTR is click-through rate. And CTR is basically impressions served, okay? So 523 for the top one, divided by total clicks, 9, okay? So that means that 1.72%, that's what that number is, okay? And that means that less than 2% of people who see my images on Bookbub actually take action. That sucks. 1.72% sucks. Anything above 3% is acceptable. and this I will say is a good rule of thumb no matter what you're doing, right? Where I think you do have to customize it on yourselves is that, for example, I actually aim for at least 6 or 7% because a lot of my targeting will hit that range. So I know I don't have to settle for 3+%. And like, so for example, Craig here, who writes contemporary sci-fi, he actually can get 10, 11, 12% on a lot of his targeting, right? And so obviously he's going to be going for those numbers as well, although depending on how good this tier 1 author is for him, and for me, you know, for any one of you, I might accept a lower percentage if I really want to kind of get that author and get into that author's also bots. Okay? We cool in the gang? Can I get some thumbs up? Can I get some hell yes? Can I get some amens? All right. Okay, sorry, I should have been a preacher. All right, so creating an ad. So first thing is this is where you kind of designate the book. Interesting thing about Bookbub is that you actually don't need a book. It's pretty loose and goosey on where you can direct the links. I do recommend promoting a book, though. That's what the platform is for. The reason why I point this out is because this is also where you can create a profile or a profile folder for the book that you're marketing. And if you're someone like me who uses Bookbub on every launch, and I write and co-author mini-series a year, as a result of that, like it gets very complicated very fast. And so you want to be able to create those profile folders for your campaigns and just kind of develop these good habits, okay? Sorry, I should say, and then you also choose your image, okay? Then you get to pick your links. Now I'm going to get a little bit more into what the links are, but I'd like you to note that I have paradise-lot.com/dragonusa, right, is my link. I'm going to, like, that's important, like that's an Easter egg. Later on, I have a slide that says I don't want a paper trail, and that's going to be relevant in a little bit, okay? So I'm using a custom link that I created. The one tip that I'll give, and I have a slide that just kind of summarizes the tips, is as beautiful and as wonderful as something like Reader Links is, and we can all thank John Logsdon, and if you don't have Reader Links, you should get it. Using universal links in this is a bad idea. Use a link per territory. Does that make sense, guys? Right, so you use a link that sends your books to the US site. Use a link that sends your book to the UK site, to the Canada site. Don't use a genius link that figures out where you are in the world, right? And then we'll send all the Canadians to Canada and all the Americans to America and whatnot, right? Does that make sense, guys? Just making sure, yeah? Why? Okay, I'll get into a little bit deeper in a minute. The reason why is because then you can keep track of things much easier, because eventually you'll start, once you've done your testing, you'll start doing one ad per book per territory. And it makes it much easier for testing. The second reason why is because it kind of fudges the results a little bit, because people are traveling, people are kind of going to other territories, the IP address is not always the most reliable. And then the third thing, and this has happened to me a few times, and this is anecdotal evidence, full disclosure, but the universal link sometimes breaks. And I'm not sure if it's just a problem with Bookbub or just bad luck or whatever, but I've had multiple universal links break when testing on Bookbub. So I wouldn't do it. But it's mostly to keep track of your results is the big reason. Okay? Oh, shoot. All right. Oh, shoot. And there are arrows to help you. All right. Once you've done that, you get to pick the author that you want to do. One thing to not forget is you'll notice that second one down is Ramy Vance. And when I target myself, I have a 6.09% result. Whereas when I target Theophilus or Nasri Noor, I get better results than targeting my own readers, which I think speaks poorly of me, but I'm not sure. Anyway, but there you go. Okay? One author per ad. Does that make sense? You're not putting multiple authors on a profile, one author per ad. And again, the reason why is for testing. But the bigger reason why is that the way that Bookbub works is that it's going to serve ads to that readership. And if you're targeting multiple authors in an ad, and it's a terrible ad, like a low CTR, or a great ad, a high CTR, you don't know who in that mix of authors is the golden goose, right? And that's the problem, right? So you want to keep the results as pure as possible, okay? All right, so then you put in the author that you're going to target, you put in your budget, and you put in your clicks. So here's full disclosure, right? Different things work for different people. I will say that across the board, there are two ways that you can target people. You can target people by bidding on impressions, and you can target people by bidding per click, okay? So impressions is, what I'm saying here is I'm willing to pay $30 to win 1,000 impressions on the ad, okay? So however many clicks I get in those 1,000 impressions, it's up to how strong the image is and how good my targeting is. But I'll pay up to $30 for 1,000 impressions, okay? You can pay per click, where you say, I will pay up to $1 per click, for example, right? Or 50 cents per click or whatever. Historically speaking, the per click targeting doesn't work as well as images. And this is something that I've talked to multiple authors about. We all seem to get the same results on that level. However, test, right? It might be different for you. You know, we can't just kind of make these general extrapolations. Also, Bookbub updates things. They change the way the system works. There's a lot of different things. The landscape's constantly changing. So pretty much with every launch, I'll do one CPC test just to see if things have changed. And so far, the answer is no. My last launch was where I did Bookbub was, shoot, I forget now. I think it was April or May. So, you know, who knows what's happened in the last 6 months on this front, right? So do test, okay? Sorry, again, arrows to help you. I keep forgetting I have arrows. Any questions here? Let me just stop here because, yeah, hit me. That's right. Yeah. It spins better, and it also, like, it just kind of like, you get better results. So for me, and I've noticed different things for different authors, but for me, my problem with CPC ads is, instead, you know, cost per click bidding versus impressions, is I just can't get it to spend. Even if I'm spending a lot of money and I'm saying $5 per click, it just won't actually spend for me. And again, it's been a while since I've tested that specific feature, so do take that with a grain of salt, right? Like, anyone who says there's one way to do it is full of crap, right? Like, there are a lot of ways to do this. I'm just kind of giving you a guideline. Yeah, hit me. Okay, it's your budget and it's testing. So here I'm doing, and I'm going to get into this in a minute in a little bit more detail, but it's worth kind of spending a second on it. Here I'm saying $15 per day for this ad, but generally speaking, I will test an ad with $3 a day, and I will give myself a $200 budget for testing, right? So $200 basically allows me 60 plus ads at $3 a pop, okay? And so in that what do you call it, like that testing phase, I'll get a good sense of what my CPC, my cost per click actually is. All right, hit me. So Bookbub will spend your money instantly, okay? So within a couple hours, often. It depends on what time in the day you're doing your ad. Oh God, yeah. You can probably test multiple ads in a day. I usually leave it for 24 hours, but this is just out of laziness because I try not to obsess about the dashboard. So, but yeah, it is pretty fast. Yeah. Sorry, I don't say that again.
Hello. The average winning bids, which are suggested there, I know in the past when I've used it, not really accurate. Are they more accurate now? Would you suggest even looking at those at the bottom, or?
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. That average winning bid. Yeah, just ignore that.
Ignore that. Okay.
Yeah. Especially like sometimes you'll put a bid and it will say, this is much higher than average. And I'll go, I talked to a lot of authors about this. Is it? Is it, Bookbub? Like, you know, so, you know, yeah, just ignore that. I'm sure the guideline probably does speak across the thousands of people who are doing this, but like in terms of people who are actually doing it to some level of success, I think you are bidding a bit more aggressively. And remember, and here's something I want to just say, and again, this was a hard presentation for me to create because it's like, some of you haven't even published a book yet, some of you have multiple series out yet, so what level am I talking to? And one of the things that you will learn as you start publishing more and more series is that your launch budget will go up more and more. Because if you're able to use your launch budget effectively, now some genres, praise be, you know, like some cozy mysteries and some lit RPG stuff and stuff like that, right? You can launch with a relatively low budget, okay? But when you're launching urban fantasy or romance, it's about aggressively getting noticed a lot of the time. Now, some people have great lists. Some people have just been blessed by the Amazon gods. Some people have hit a new niche, and so they're able to do it with a lower budget. But when you're writing, and a good indicator actually is, sorry, this is a tangent, but it's a really relevant question. So there's something called Klytics. Everyone know what Klytics is, right? So you know when you kind of get like hot, Klytics is like this, Alex Newton, he does a profile of all the categories on Amazon. And he'll kind of tell you that this category is a hot niche or hot mainstream, right? And when you kind of look at those categories, which are the hot niches or the hot mainstream ones, those are the expensive ones, right? Like those are the ones that you have to aggressively launch in to get Amazon's algorithm to pick you up and start kind of organically pushing you. There are lots of ways to do it that isn't using Bookbub and stuff like that. Like again, there's no one way to do it, right? But this is just one of the tools. But if you are in a difficult genre like romance, right, billionaire romance, like God bless you, but you're in a tough. That's a tough fight, right? And so you look at your budget and you look at what your CPC per click is, and then what you try to do is just try to launch. Try to optimize that budget to get the most sales as possible to kind of rise up in the ranks as much as possible. All right, I'm just gonna kind of jump ahead because I think some of your questions will be answered in this next couple slides. So then you kind of name your ad. So don't feed the dragons, the name of the book. Andrew's who I'm targeting. My budget is $15, and it's for a 99-cent promo. Do not get lazy on this. I mean, whatever your naming system is, you know, you do you, boo-boo, but have a naming system. Because if you're not having a naming system, you are going to screw yourself, and you are not going to learn anything if you can't measure it. Okay. All right. So here are the tips and tricks. Look, my presentation is available, right? Or take a quick picture of the slide, and then we're going to go into the testing part. Okay. I'll give you guys 10 seconds to take a picture. 9, 8, I lied. I gave 4 seconds. 3, 2, okay, share the images. All right. All right, okay, so here's the testing flow. I should have called it lateral flow. That would have been very timely. Here's the testing flow. The first thing you do is pick your images. So typically when I'm creating a new Bookbub campaign, I will create 40 plus images. I use Canva to do it. If you have a higher skill set than me, you can use, Photoshop, whatever. And then of the 40 images, I'll kind of pick the 10 or so images that I like, and then I'll kind of narrow it down to the 4 with having about 6 in reserve to test if things don't work out. I'll test it on one author. I'll narrow it down to the best image. I'll retest if inconclusive, and I'll add images if necessary. Okay, and then image testing tips. Different territories have different results. Okay, I have seen this so many times, like especially the UK and the US. What works in the UK is different than the US. I would say for 99% of you, who cares? Just focus on the US. That's where the gorilla is. All right? Like, just focus on the territory that matters the most, and that's the US. You will, most of us, with the exception of a handful of niche genres, you're going to make your money off of the US store. Okay? Different days have different results. Just deal with it, right? And don't overdo it. All right. So once you have the images, you create the image, $3 ad, 3% CTR is your aim. Do it. Don't use universal links, and know that not all genres are created equal. So here's an example. So I tested image 17, 19, 21, and 24 against Michael Anderle, Martha Carr, Stephanie Fox, and Mackenzie Hunter. Clearly, the winners are 17 and 24, with a weird anomaly with Martha Carr with 17. Okay? So I kind of felt, looking at these numbers, that it was too close to call between 17 and 24. Now, here's a pro tip, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, because it is a rabbit hole, but the way that Bookbub serves images to their readers, it's often good to have, like, I know I need to target Martha Carr. I know I need to target Stephanie Fox on launches, right? And it's often good to just have 2 ads. This is during launch phase with 2 different images. And this kind of gives you the most bang for your buck based on how Bookbub serves ads. It's the level of frequency and recency of that frequency. You get a bit more bang for your buck, okay? All right, so now I have my 2 images, and here are all the authors that, using the also bought trick that I showed you earlier, that I'm going to target, okay? And this is all done in pre-order, right? And so if you go back a slide, on the 10th, I tested my image. On the 11th, 12th, and 13th, I tested the authors I determined were my tier 1s. They're the ones that I feel were closest to me, okay? And of that, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus Martha Carr, plus Stephanie Fox, plus Mackenzie Hunter, right? So I got 11 authors to target for my launch. This is 11 authors out of however many authors are on this list, okay? But it's like 20 plus authors that I was testing at, right? Like almost 30 authors that I was targeting. So not everyone worked. In fact, most people didn't work. About 1/3 of the people I tested worked. Does that make sense, guys, right? Are we cool in the gang? Right? Okay, cool. All right, now that I've got my people that I'm going to target, I get a little bit deeper into measuring, because it's not so much about what works and what doesn't work, but I'm actually trying to pay attention to my spend and my cost per clicks and my CTR. And I'm ruthless, right? So Stephanie Fox, for whatever reason, no matter how high I bid it, I could never get her budget to spend entirely for me, right? Whereas everyone else would spend the entire budget I'd put on it. And then as for clicks, well, Tori Santani stopped working. And guess what? She stopped working because I was lazy. And she's not actually a tier 1 for me. All right? I was just lazy. I was being quick. She was in a bunch of also bots. I determined that she was someone to target. I was actually wrong. And that proved itself out when I started running ads over a longer period of time and not just that quick test. Okay? All right. The testing rabbit hole is deep. Okay? For those of you who are number focused, it is really deep. And so I just would say be careful, right? Territories, separating authors based on territories. So there's one author, Lisa Blackwood. Amazing results for Australia. Doesn't work anywhere else in the world for me, right? And this is what you learn when you start testing different authors in different territories. But it is a rabbit hole. And if you have limited bandwidth, if this is already overwhelming to you, just focus on the US. The US is where you'll get the most bang for your buck, okay? I'm not saying ignore the other territories. And when you become more badass, when you level up in this game, you can start expanding it. But in the beginning, I wouldn't kill yourself too much. Okay, different images for different authors, times of day, targeting insanity, and then calculating conversion blues, okay? So there's a lot that you can get really nitty-gritty on, and I'm just going to focus for a minute on calculating conversion blues. So what does that mean? So let's say I get 100 clicks from Bookbub to Amazon, and then I get 20 sales. So the logic says that that's 1 in 4 people who click on Bookbub buy. But the problem with that is that you never know when Amazon's sending out an email. You don't know who's found you organically. You don't know who's just randomly heard about you. So that 1 in 5 is probably more like 1 in 8, 1 in 10, right? And this becomes especially confusing when you're augmenting this, remember, with other things like AMS, with newsletters, with promos, with whatever it is. So one trick is, when testing, send them to a landing page. The landing page is click or die, click or leave, okay? And so if on the landing page I'm getting 1 in 10 people are clicking on the landing page, you can say your conversion rate is 1 in 10 roughly. Now, it's not exactly that, because you will lose people from the landing page to Amazon. And do not use a landing page strategy outside of the testing phase. Because when you're aiming for those sales, you don't want to lose that 30%. You don't want to have that 30% leakage, right? Which is what you'll lose just by simply offering or including an additional step, okay? And then step 3 is time to hit it, okay? So a lot of things you can do, right? A lot of things you can synergize with. But the biggest mistake I see young authors, and this is where I know we're at all different levels, but young beginning authors do, is they're not willing to spend to test, right? And you have to understand that if you're spending like $500 on a campaign for Bookbub with a launch, that's your education fund, right? In the beginning especially, that's your education fund, and you're learning how to use these platforms, and you're learning how to work with them, and there's just no way around that. And you just have to accept that you're going to get shitty results in the beginning until you start figuring out what works for you. So just actually start doing it. And in all seriousness, like, Bookbub is one of the best ad platforms to use. It's certainly one of the easiest platforms to use once you start giving yourself the rules to work with. Okay, and then finally, a bonus tip, but you didn't hear from me, so no slides. Remember that special link that I showed in the beginning, /DragonUSA? So this is for the techies in the room. What you can do is you can create what's called a 301 redirect link, okay? And then have that redirect link be an affiliate link. Now, affiliate link measurement is really shitty. It's not accurate, but at least you're getting some numbers on which you can kind of look at and have some kind of guideline on, okay? And because you're using a 301 redirect, you're not actually breaking Amazon terms and services. Well, you are. Okay, well, let's be clear. You are, but it's a loophole, right? Because the rule is you can't use an affiliate link in newsletters, but you can use it on your website. Well, is it my fault that they're spending like 1/4 of a second on my website? Right? So, again, it's not kosher, what I'm recommending, but for the techies in the room who have a reasonably high level of risk, and then the worst thing that they'll do to you, to be honest, and I hate that I'm being recorded for this. I don't know if we can cut the cameras, but the worst thing that they'll do for you is kick you off the affiliate program, which is not a big deal. So, okay? It's not like they're going to ban you from, I hope, at least. Okay, that's it. Remember, it's not a silver bullet. And I use this as an example. I was getting 6% CTR. I was getting amazing results with my Bookbub targeting for this series. The series itself was extremely well reviewed. Biggest flop of my life, right? Great reviews, great targeting, really shit sales, okay? It's not a silver bullet, and nothing really is, okay? All right, I have time for exactly half a question. All right. How do you practice sales conversions?
How do you track the sales conversions?
Right, and so the best answer is using something like an affiliate link, or just trying to eyeball it and okay, I got 100 clicks and 20 sales, but 10 of those sales were from AMS, so I'm going to attribute these other 10 sales to Bookbub. It's not perfect because you can't measure organic. Yeah, go for it.
How long do you run your new release ads for after it's released?
18 days usually. Last question, 10 seconds, 9, 8. Oh, okay. No, usually, so I'll launch at full price for a series. I'll launch at full price, and then I'll have a 5-day 99 cents window, and so that's when I'll run the majority of my Bookbub ads is in that 5-day window. When I'm launching a box set, I'll usually do a box set launch for at least the first 30 days of the box set, sometimes longer depending on how it's doing, at which point I will do it. But typically speaking, I'll only use Bookbub for 99 cents promos. I have had success doing it at $2.99 with the ad saying new. And that actually converted reasonably decently for my weekend series. All right, I've been cut off now. Thank you all. See y'all on the flip side. Take care.